She walked into a diner just to ask for food for her kids. The manager made sure everyone in that room watched him destroy her. He had no idea 6 bikers were sitting right behind him. Her name was Carol, 34 years old. 2 kids at home, a boy named Danny, 7 years old, and a little girl named Mia, 5. And for the past 3 days, Carol had been running on coffee and whatever small snacks she could stretch out to make sure her kids didn't go to bed hungry. She was failing at that too. 6 weeks before this day, her husband packed a bag, cleaned out their joint bank account, and left. No warning, no explanation, just gone. And Carol was left holding everything. The rent, the bills, the kids, the questions she didn't have answers to. She had applied for 12 jobs that week alone. She had called her sister, 2 cousins, old friends from school. Everyone was dealing with their own problems. Nobody could help. So there she was, standing outside a diner on the edge of town, trying to work up the courage to walk in and do something she had never done in her entire life. Ask a stranger for food. Think about what that moment feels like. You've always handled your own life. You've always paid your bills, fed your kids, kept things together. And then one day life hits you so hard, so fast, that you're standing outside a restaurant hoping someone will take pity on you. That's not weakness. That's a mother who has tried everything else and has one option left. She walked in. The place was half full. Families eating lunch. A few older couples. The smell of bacon and coffee in the air. And in the back corner booth, 6 men in heavy black leather jackets with a motorcycle club patch stitched across the back. They'd just come off a long ride. Boots still dusty, coffee going cold in front of them. Not causing trouble. Just sitting there tired, minding their own business. Carol walked up to the counter and asked for the manager. His name was Dale. Now, Dale was the kind of person who had probably been told his whole life that he was in charge of something. And that little bit of power had turned into something ugly over the years. The moment Carol started talking, his face changed. Not into sympathy, not even into basic human decency, into something colder than that. Carol kept her voice low. She explained the situation. Kids at home, empty fridge, husband gone. She wasn't asking for money. She just wanted to know if they had anything left over. Food that would otherwise get thrown away at the end of the day. Dale leaned across the counter, loud enough for half the diner to hear, and told her this wasn't a soup kitchen. The diner went quiet. Not movie quiet, where dramatic music plays. Real quiet. The kind where you can hear someone set down a fork. A woman nearby looked down at her plate. A man near the window found something very interesting to look at on his phone. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Carol tried one more time, quieter, more desperate. She mentioned Mia and Danny by name. Dale told her to leave before he called the police. And here is the moment where everything in this story turns. Because sitting in that corner booth, a man named Marcus had heard every single word. Marcus was the road captain of a motorcycle club called the Iron Cross Brotherhood. 11 years riding together. He was big, 6'2", the kind of build that makes people unconsciously step aside in hallways. But the men who rode with him would tell you something else about Marcus first. They'd tell you he was the kind of man who noticed things, who paid attention when other people looked away. He had been watching Carol from the moment she walked through that door. He saw her hands shaking. He saw her take a breath before she spoke. And when Dale said what he said, Marcus put his coffee cup down, slowly, deliberately, and he stood up. All 5 of the other bikers stood up at the exact same time. Nobody gave a signal. Nobody said a word. They just stood. Now picture this from Dale's perspective. He's feeling good about himself. He just threw a desperate woman out of his diner in front of a room full of people and nobody did anything. And then he turns around and there are 6 enormous men in leather jackets walking toward the counter. He took a step back. Marcus stopped in front of him, looked him dead in the eye, and asked him very calmly, very quietly, to repeat what he had just said to that woman. Dale did not repeat it. Marcus turned to Carol, introduced himself, asked her how old her kids were, what they liked to eat. Carol was so thrown off she almost couldn't form words. She told him about Danny, about Mia and her obsession with pancakes. Marcus nodded like she was telling him the most important information he'd heard all week. Then he turned back to Dale and told him they'd be placing an order, a big one, enough for Carol's family. And they were going to sit right there at that counter until every bit of it was boxed, up and ready to go home with her. Dale started to say something about company policy. A biker named Hector held up his phone and mentioned, very casually, that he'd been recording the last 4 minutes and had about 60,000 followers who really enjoyed stories about restaurant managers. The policy conversation ended immediately. Carol sat at that counter while the bikers ordered. And they didn't just order food for the kids. They ordered her a full meal. Hot food, real food. Told her to sit down and eat it. And she did. She sat there in her beige cardigan with 6 bikers in leather. jackets on either side of her, and she ate. Probably the first real meal she'd had in days. She talked. For almost an hour she talked. She told them everything. About her husband leaving, about the job applications going nowhere, about sitting on the edge of her bed at night after putting the kids to sleep, trying not to fall apart, about smiling all day so Danny and Mia wouldn't see her breakdown. Marcus listened. All of them did. And here's the thing. They didn't try to fix everything with advice she didn't ask for. They just listened. Like real human beings who understood that sometimes that's exactly what a person needs first. Before they got up to leave, they took a collection. Every man at that table put something in. They handed Carol an envelope, enough to cover 2 full months of groceries. One of the quieter guys, a man named Roy who had barely said 10 words the whole time, pulled out a small card and wrote down the name and number of a woman at his church who helped single mothers find stable work. Carol walked out to the parking lot and stood next to her car and cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep when something you've been holding for weeks finally gets released. Because for the first time in 6 weeks, she didn't feel completely alone. Hector posted the video that evening. It didn't go viral because of a fight or a dramatic confrontation. It went viral because of what it actually showed. 6 men in leather jackets, sitting calmly at a diner counter, buying a meal for a mother and her kids and refusing to be moved. The comments were brutal for Dale. The owners of the diner saw it by the weekend. By Tuesday of the following week, Dale was no longer the manager. Nobody from the Iron Cross Brotherhood ever talked about what they did like it was some big act of heroism. That wasn't the point. That was never the point. Carol got a call from Roy's contact the following week. Job interview scheduled. She got the position. It didn't solve everything overnight, but it was a door opening when every other door had been shut in her face. Mia still talks about the day the big men in the leather jackets bought her pancakes. She tells it to her friends like it's a fairy tale. And honestly, maybe it kind of was. Because the people who show up for you when the world walks past, they don't always look the way you expect them to.